Hello everyone, I'm Baibarac, a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Media and Culture Studies at Utrecht University. Together with my colleague Michael de Lange, we are exploring the notion of controversing in relation to civic engagement in the datafied smart city, which we'll introduce in today's presentation. With our concept of controversing, we address the implications that datification has on urban inhabitants and urban democracy, proposing that a struggle and public values must be central when developing just and fair datafied smart cities. The departure point for developing this concept is an ongoing research project in which both of us are involved. The project is entitled Designing for Controversies in Responsible Smart Cities. It is funded by the Dutch National Science Foundation and involves collaboration between two Dutch universities, so Utrecht University and University of Twente, together with a consortium of public and private partners. The main case for the project is Amersfoort, a mid-sized city in the center of the Netherlands. We propose controversing as a new approach for engaging citizens with a datafied smart city. Often, institutional endeavors to increase civic engagement with datification tend to focus on data visualizations that highlight specific issues around datification, but at the same time gloss over certain thorny questions. So instead, we propose controversing as a deliberate strategy of making datification controversial, focusing on questions around how people can become engaged in issues and debates around public values in the datafied smart city. So more specifically, we explore how citizen engagement actually takes place in the datafied smart city and what it is composed of. Showing the data or telling the story or even involving citizens in data collection tend to be unproblematically equaled with increasing participation. But how do people actually become engaged? What do they exactly engage with? And what frictions and contestations does this engender? We also inquire who gets to define and articulate controversial issues. Central to our argument is that while data visualizations may highlight or expose certain frictions or dangers associated with datification, such as state or corporate control and surveillance, all too often, these contestations are framed externally by others and not by the people interacting with the data. So we ask what might be the conditions that allow citizens to identify their own issues of concern. Thirdly, we investigate how the datafied city spurs a continuous renegotiation and redefinition of public values by multiple and diverse publics, so not just a singular public. Different groups have conflicting viewpoints on the issues involved in datification and the values they attach to them. So for instance, a security camera in public space might mean safety for me, but it could mean surveillance for someone else. So what does this mean in the context of protecting and including public values in the design and governance of cities? To illustrate how controversy might unfold in practice, we will briefly discuss a controversing workshop, which is a design-oriented method that we developed as part of our research project. The method is aimed at engaging diverse urban stakeholders in debating the datification of the city and in imagining potential actions to address the issues they observe. This is done by combining data walking methods, which have experiential and awareness-raising qualities, with co-design elements, which allow participants to formulate and debate ideas together. We tested the method as part of a meeting with our consortium partners in Amersfoort in November 2019. And we're going to use these preliminary results to discuss and highlight the three conceptual dimensions of our controversing framework. The first dimension of our framework is recontextualization. With this dimension, we posit that controversing reurbanizes big data by situating contestations around datification in specific spatio-temporal settings. Walking with specific tasks, such as taking photographs of urban technologies that participants associated with datification, seem to bring about a certain a better understanding of the notion of data and also to bring data closer to people's everyday urban realities. So for instance, participants identified air quality sensors, RFID readers, and surveillance cameras. While this may seem like obvious smart city technologies, this step was really important for eliciting discussions about the values each participant associated with technologies through their own perspectives and practices. The second dimension of our concept is meaning making. With this dimension, we posit that controversing reflects an epistemological need for ways of interfacing with abstract dimensions of deification and translating them into collective issues of concern. After the walk, the participants mapped their routes and observations around deification. The mapping, especially through the use of instant photographs, enabled group discussion about the values reflected by certain technologies and how this shapes the surrounding environment. For instance, empty shopping streets were associated with increased online shopping. So this exercise seemed to help the groups to discuss and debate potential tensions around deification by rendering them visible and explicit on the map. In this context, the map acts as a meaningful interface that helps to generate group discussions about emerging controversies around deification and thus makes them debatable. The third and last dimension of our concept is agency. With this dimension, we posit that controversing shifts the onus of participation from individuals to the conditions enabling participation in the shaping of smart city futures. In the last step of the workshop, the participants presented their deification maps and collectively reflected upon the value tensions and issues they identified using a controversing graph. At the same time, they're invited to imagine types of strategies that could enable other people, a wider audience, to actually engage with these issues. Examples include food delivery receipts that include the price of personal data in exchange for the convenience of having the food delivered, or stickers announcing the presence of a 5G antenna, so somehow bringing these technologies back into a certain physical context. While speculative in nature, the strategies illustrate how deification can be made actionable by creating conditions for collective reflection on the mediating roles of technology in the city and the kinds of values participants found important to be protected. The concept of controversing fits well with conflict-oriented and maximalist democratic participation models. While institutional takes on civic engagement with deification tend to aim for consensus, for example, by smoothing out tensions, we explore controversies for their capacity to produce engagement precisely by bringing to light diverse and potentially conflicting values. So this productive capacity is reflected in our use of the term as a verb, controversing. At the same time, the maximalist end of the participation spectrum is focused on an everyday politics of participation. It entails micro-scale involvement, situated at the level of specific social spatial domains, and it is sensitive to the heterogeneity of actors involved in decision-making processes. So in this context, we propose controversing as a multivocal, situated, and frictional take on doing things with data. However, the concept of controversing is still in its infancy. We just started to develop ideas around it. More work will be needed in order to fully explore its potential for enhancing civic engagement in the data-fied smart city. We suggest that a fruitful avenue would be to investigate further how controversies around data and deification of urban life, once articulated, may be stabilized as an outcome of democratization processes. This points to questions such as what does it mean to have a smart city based on public values? Who are the public and whose values might such a city actually express and support, or potentially the inverse? What values may be rejected? And how can value pluralism be articulated? And also how might diverse values coexist in practice? Ultimately, controversing proposes a leap in how policymakers think about and develop smart cities, a different way of seeing and doing. Contemporary urban challenges such as climate change require urgent solutions, and smart city technologies and big data claim to deliver them by addressing inefficiencies in the urban system. Besides issues of inclusion and social justice, this also leads to the dominance of urban imaginaries by smart corporate actors, which may prevent cities from opening up space for alternative imaginaries, shaped by those who actually inhabit them. Yet, creating conditions for articulating diverse values and imagining alternative futures, that is, freeing the imagination about other smart city futures, may be just the key to building them together. We thank you very much for your attention and look forward to your feedback and suggestions.